Hello and welcome. You're listening to Start Again with Shauna Lee, sponsored by Soulway Massage. This is the place where you'll be reminded that it's never too late and you're never too old to do the damn thing. So stick around if you're ready to vibe higher and be inspired to chase your dreams. Together, we will uncover your soul's truest desires. Now, if you're ready, let's get started. Well, hello, friends, and welcome back. I'm introducing you to Candace Yaeger. She is an inspiring woman of many talents and accomplishments, which she will tell us all about. She's dedicated to helping people get unstuck, step into their potential, and achieve successful, fulfilling work lives. Her mantra is lift as you climb, and she's committed to community involvement, volunteerism, and philanthropy. I am so excited to introduce you to her today. Candace, thank you for being here.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
Absolutely. I just love the way the internet has brought me so many new friends, and I'm so excited to get to know you a little better today and give you an opportunity to introduce yourself to my audience. We like to kick things off here with a quick little tell us about yourself, where you're located, and what you do.
So I am located in Sarasota, Florida. I am originally from Philadelphia, and the most difficult question asked of me for me to answer is, what do I do? I do a lot. I've done a lot. I hate the question personally, what do you do for work? Because that's totally different than what I actually do.
Yeah, that's great.
So I'm an entrepreneur and executive coach. That's my day job. I have a nonprofit in Pennsylvania that I co-founded. I really mostly like to think of myself as a cheerleader and supporter of other people. I do a lot in the community, and I really try to live my life not only by my mantra, lift as you climb, but thinking more so, what do I want people to say about me at my funeral? That sounds dark, but
No, I love it.
I want to live a legacy. I don't care about my paycheck and, my titles and things like that.
Yeah, I love that. Well, I feel like we're kindred spirits in that way. And I often say the same thing. Like I spend a lot of time thinking about what I want people to say about me after I'm gone, not from a perspective of I want them to say how amazing I am, but I want to leave an impact on people for the better. And so I totally resonate with what you're saying. So tell us a little bit about your story. How did you get to this place where you're not chasing a dollar and you're looking to lift as you climb? But specifically, how have you embraced this idea of starting again?
So and this is one of the reasons why you and the work that you do and your story and everything really resonates with me. Really comes from starting again, because I'll kind of tell a little bit of my story here in a second, but I was always someone that was kind of resistant to starting over or starting again until I was forced to. And it's so important for me now to kind of share the message of like, we can start again and do something new or different or make any kind of change at any age, stage, or situation. But I was never really like that. So a little bit about my story and my background. I'm born and raised in Philadelphia to public servant parents, teacher, and police officer. So it was just always in me that like, I'm going to help, I'm going to serve. That's what I'm here for. Didn't really understand that there was anything different than that, right? So I found myself fascinated by humans and by people and by our own brains. And I kind of found myself going to school for psychology, getting a master's degree, and becoming a mental health therapist. And, I was all about just serving and helping. And the one thing I didn't realize was it was absolutely like destroying me. I was
Mm.
it takes a certain person. Takes a certain person to be a therapist, to be a nurse, to be a teacher, to be in that world. And I was taking home so much. I was getting migraines. I was sick all the time. I was exhausted. And I felt like a shell of myself. But I think what happens all too often is, well, I spent so much time, energy, and money to get to this point, and now I have my
Yeah.
quote unquote dream job, the quote unquote career I'm supposed to have, right? Like,
You made it.
yeah, I made it. I'm here. And, I thought, well, maybe everyone's just miserable and tired and gets migraines for 3 days at a time. Maybe that's normal. And I did all these mental gymnastics, and it took, I will tell you, the first, I had a phone call one day. I was working in community mental health, and I got a phone call from the receptionist. Mind you, my office was right next to the receptionist's desk. I walk into the office, she waves to me. I sit down at my desk and close my door, get my patient files ready for the day, and I had a voicemail from her. I don't know why she couldn't just tell me, but she tells me that I can close a certain case file because the patient's dead. She said deceased.
Oh,
But I was like, you can't just someone that I've been trying to help for months, has passed and you're not going
yes.
to just tell me that? So I was like, okay, well, maybe I am just not tough skinned enough yet for this. Maybe this is just how it is. And I just like I said, all these mental gymnastics to try to convince myself this is normal, this is okay, blah, blah, blah. It was keeping me up at night. And
Mhm.
there was this little voice in the back of my head saying, oh no, this is how it is. You just have to man up. You have to get, or woman up. You have to get tougher, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, okay, fine. So it was only a matter of weeks later that I got a phone call that my brother, who is my best friend, my only sibling, was killed in a motorcycle accident.
Oh my goodness.
I was, there was no such thing as mental gymnastics. Now I'm like, okay, breathe in and breathe out. Brush your teeth. As
Right.
anyone that's been through any kind of life shattering, flip the table upside down, nothing makes sense anymore kind of situation knows, you go into human mode. Okay, let's try to eat a meal. It's a
Exactly.
totally different way of existing, right? I was forced in that situation after, of course, going to therapy.
Yes.
Remembering to brush my teeth every day. Um, you know, kind of taking these little baby healing steps. Then I got to a point I was forced to say okay, was I really in the career I was supposed to have? Is this
Yep.
really, do I really want to be in the same place as a mental health therapist? It's not fulfilling to me. It's mentally and physically exhausting. Do I really want to
Mhm.
be here in 10, 15 years? If I was the one to die tomorrow, am I going to be on my deathbed feeling like I did good for me,
Yeah.
for anyone else?
Yeah.
So a lot of reflective moments. And that's when I was like, okay, now it's time to start again, but different.
Yes. Well, and it's starting again. Here's the theme I'm hearing from most of these women that I'm getting the opportunity to speak to. It is it's these moments that are life shattering. It's after usually significant loss of some sort that it brings us to our knees and we're kind of forced to look at our lives and say, is this really what I want for my life? The theme I'm seeing is we've all gotten to this point. However, we all had the tiny whisper the entire time. We
Hmm.
all heard the questions in the back of our mind. And so, my goal from this podcast is to introduce these stories. One, so that people can see these amazing things that are possible, expand their view for what is now possible for their own life, but also to remind them that the tiny whispers that you've been hearing are the ones to pay attention to. And it doesn't need to require us to get to that life-shattering moment to bring us to our knees to have the realization that, ah, shit, this isn't what I want to be doing. Like, you can just pay attention to what you already know to be true and start listening to that. So I really love that you shared that part of your story. I think, it's hard for us sometimes to share the deep losses, but I find such value in it from both perspectives, right? The person telling the story as well as the one hearing it. There's so much value in us sharing those stories because I think that's what ultimately draws us together and we see that commonality that we all
Mhm.
have. So thank you for sharing that. When you look at your story, what do you think inspires you most about it?
I think what inspires me most is I had a strength within me that I didn't know existed. And I think I see that, and I'm sure you probably see that with a lot of the women you speak to as well. Um, I had a strength within me that I had no clue was there. If you would have
Mhm,
asked me prior to this life shattering, you know, almost like incomprehensible for me situation happened, if you would have
mhm.
asked me, a month before it happened, what would life look like if your brother died? In all honesty, and I tell people this and it's a little jarring for some, like, I don't know. I would probably either end up in inpatient care for the rest of my life or turning to, I've never tried drugs, but I feel like I would start and then get addicted or something. I don't know. Whatever worst case scenario you could think of would only be a fraction of how horrible I would think that when my life would be. I had no idea. And when it first happened as well, I had no clue. I was like, how do I even live after this? I didn't realize how strong and resilient that we really are deep down.
Yep,
And that has been so invaluable for me. I'll often, because I'm one of, like, I'll look at the sky and talk to my angels sometimes, and I'll be like, thank you so much for this, because I now will take chances and do things in my life that I never thought that I would have done, because I'm like, I'm
yes.
apparently kind of badass. Like, if I survived
Yes.
this, I can do a lot. Like, things that looked scary before, like getting on the TED stage. I'm like, oh, that's nothing, Like, I will put myself in situations. I was always afraid of failure, afraid of rejection. I put myself in situations now because I'm like, really, what's the worst that can happen? It's already happened.
Oh my gosh, it's so true. And yes, I will say that is a theme that's coming out of these conversations is I have always said it's kind of women stepping into their power, but
Mhm.
it is knowing their own strength. It is knowing how resilient we are and how much of a badass we are,
Mhm.
really, at the end of the day.
We all have it in there. You're
Yep.
absolutely right. Like, it takes different situations for us to step into it, but I think a lot of times we don't step into it because we don't realize that it's in there already. We just gotta, like,
Yep.
we just have to tap into it. Unfortunately, for many of us, it takes something very tragic for us. It takes some kind of loss, some kind of major rejection, something that just shakes our
Yep.
lives upside down for us to realize it.
Well, shit, I needed 3. I needed 3 divorces to turn my life upside down before I was finally like, "Okay, fine. I'll listen. Yeah, yeah, I got it. I got it. I'm not doing."
Maybe it takes 3. For some people it takes even more, but you're absolutely right. Like, we have it within us. So what if we tapped into that power and stepped into it
Mhm.
before something completely throws our life upside down once, twice, 3 times even.
Exactly. I do think it's incredible that you could get to that point where you're grateful for the experience now. I had a similar moment. I had participated recently in very interesting, submit your answer to this question, and they're just compiling all these different things into a podcast episode. I'm like, oh, that's interesting way to go about grabbing content. But the question was, who are you most grateful to?
Mm.
And I sat with that question for a minute and I thought, well, today I'm actually most grateful to my third ex-husband.
Mm.
And it's, and listen, this man drives me crazy still to this day. So it's not like I adore him, because this has been a challenge to get to this point. But my gratitude to him is because of what that did to me, that utter loss, that last divorce that really did bring me to my knees. And I realized how strong I was, and I realized all these amazing things, but it kickstarted me into my actual purpose.
Mm.
And it took that experience with him to get me there. And I thought, well, and listen, it took me probably about 8 years till I could say I'm grateful to him. But it's a real full circle moment when we can come back to that thing that caused us such pain and actually then have gratitude for the experience.
Yes, and the you make such a really important distinction there, because we can be grateful for the lesson. We can really have
Correct.
love and appreciation for the lesson without appreciating the situation, without having any kind of gratitude towards the person, right? There's a
Yep.
distinction there, which I really appreciate you pointing out, because a lot of times I would have conversations with people and say, like, I would be asked, about my greatest influence and, what I've, greatest lessons and things like that. And
Yeah.
I have learned, or who's the person that's your biggest mentor, or
Yeah.
whatever. And I've learned more from my brother in his death than I learned a lot. He was my younger Irish twin, but I did learn a lot from him
Oh,
in his life,
yes.
100%. But I've
Yes.
learned more from him in his death and then in the decade plus since. I can have gratitude for those lessons without, and I can still absolutely hate the situation that happened to me and still be
Yes.
completely
Yes.
grief stricken. But that's the distinction, like
Hmm.
you have such gratitude and appreciation for the lesson that was learned. Even, and that doesn't
Hmm.
necessarily mean that you have to actually be grateful or appreciate the human that created the
Yes.
situation. And I
Yeah.
love that distinction.
Exactly.
I appreciate that.
Well, and speaking of lessons, as you look back on your journey and you think about all these lessons you've kind of learned and gathered along the way, what do you think is the common theme for you?
I think that's really tough. I think that for me, if I really kind of step back and look at all of the lessons that have been valuable for me, my biggest thing is I had to learn to be more selfish. And I think, that happened to me and by selfish, I mean, I kind of want us to think of being selfish as just actually considering ourselves and taking care of ourselves and prioritizing ourselves.
Prioritizing is really what it comes down to for me. Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And I think that, when I look back on life in the lessons that have been most valuable, the theme is sometimes I just have to kind of like step back from things and like actually put myself first. Like, okay, what do I want here? What do I need here?
Yes.
And kind of getting down to the basics. And just sometimes in my life has that meant that I am, burning bridges or letting people down. Okay, that happens. Such is life. Sometimes we have to be more selfish and focus on us, because at the end of the day, who else is going to?
Yes. Absolutely. I mean, you're preaching my sermon. I love it. I tell people all the time.
That's why I was so excited to talk to you. I was
Yes.
like, oh my gosh, we definitely speak the same
We
language.
totally speak the same language. Yeah, I think getting to this point, especially for women, um, being able to prioritize ourself in the mix is the hard part, right? That's the challenge to overcome is not only should you not make yourself last on the, like you need to be in the mix, and you need to be considering yourself first. And it really is a mind
Mhm.
shift when you start to actually care for yourself. And this was such an important question that you asked, kind of mixed in all of the other things that you were saying. What do you want? Because I don't think very many of us stop, myself included, on a day-to-day basis. What do I actually want? This happened just last night when we were talking about dinner. And I've got a bunch of kids, and they're coming and going all the time. And who I'm always considering, what will this one eat? What, this one doesn't like that. You might want this tonight. Never in there was I considering what I wanted. And so my boyfriend said, "Well, yes, but what do you want?" And I was like, "Hold on a second. What do I want?" Hadn't even stopped to consider what I actually wanted to eat for dinner, because that just wasn't even a consideration. And
Mhm.
I think that really is the shift for us to get to the point where not only are you like prioritizing yourself and making your voice matter and your opinion and your desires, but like, what do you want?
Mhm.
And that is the question that I think drives a lot of these start again moments, because it's from that kind of rock bottom place that you get to say, okay, now what? And it forces you to say, but what do I want? Not what should I do? Not
Exactly.
what does everybody expect from me?
Mhm.
What do you want?
Mhm.
And I think when we give ourselves permission to actually think about those answers, that's when like the clouds open and the rainbows come out and all the stars align.
Absolutely. And how often, and that's such a beautiful example, um, because how often do we actually ask the people in our lives that matter to us what they want?
Exactly.
That's
Exactly.
it's so easy for us. It just roll like it's natural, especially as women and caregivers. So simple. Ask your kids, well, what do you want? Or at least if you're not asking them, you're considering, what does this
Yeah.
person want? If someone really matters in our lives, our best friends, our parents, whoever, you're asking
Mhm.
them what they want, or you already know them well enough to know what they want,
Yes.
and you're taking that into consideration. So what if we at least, like you said, put ourselves in that mix? What if we
Yeah.
actually started considering, well, what do I want too? It doesn't
Yeah.
mean that no one else matters anymore. It just means that we're
Right.
finally treating ourselves with the same care and respect and consideration as the other people that matter to us.
Exactly. Well said. The best way to attract love is to love yourself. For many of us, we are only just beginning to learn what it truly means to care for ourselves, and that can begin with your body. A happy body leads to a happy mind and a happy spirit. This is what self-care is built upon. Now, if you are local, you must visit Soulway Massage in Round Rock, Texas. Jen will help you to shift, release, and transform your emotional and physical blocks. Jen's ability to read a body and respond is nothing short of magical. She uses a custom approach for every client that includes various healing massage modalities like Thai yoga massage and lymphatic drainage therapy. Book your first body session at Soulway Massage with code LOVE. The links are in the show notes. Now, let's get back to the show. I think we get to this point in our lives, we've gained some wisdom, some knowledge. We're a little bit smarter than the younger us. Like, when you look back at that younger version of you, what advice would you give her?
I think the younger me, I would tell, like, just stop paying attention to what the heck other people think,
Hmm.
because I think that that held me back a lot, and not so much in a um like ego driven way, but I know that that's, common for many people too, but more so letting people down and people pleasing and, being
Hmm.
disappointing. One of my things that just went over and over in my head, for example, when I decided to leave as a mental health therapist, not really decided, but I was kicked off of the ledge with my brother's death, and I couldn't brush my own teeth, you know, let alone practice cognitive behavioral therapy and help other
Right.
people, right? Like, I was in a way worse situation than anyone I had, I treated. And I would say that facetiously, but I was not in a
Uh-huh.
good place. And one of the things that would always be in my head was like, okay, but I had a very expensive graduate degree that took me years, and my
Oh,
parents were kind
yes.
enough to co-sign my loan so that I could get a loan. So they took a risk by co-signing something for me. Won't I be a disappointment? Or, it's things like that that would kind of like play in my mind. And it's not like I don't care what my parents think, but at the end of the day, should I be letting something like that be keeping me in a miserable situation that's not a fit for me? And I think a lot of times younger me, would find myself in a situation where I would be like, well, I don't want to let anyone down. Like my one of my biggest things when we're kind of just talking about this situation here, so I'll use this as an example, is I was in such a moment of grief for quite a long time that I was, trying to remember to eat and brush my teeth. And one of the things was in the back of my head was like, you know, am I letting my clients down? Am I letting down, my patients? And am I letting down the organization that hired me? Like, I think that now older me would tell younger me, stop paying so much attention to what other people think and take a step back and really, observe things differently.
Well, yeah, and those two things are super tied together, right? This idea of
Mhm.
worrying about what other people think and also making yourself a priority. Like in that moment, you
Mhm.
needed to make yourself a priority. Your own self-care was
Yeah.
the ultimate priority. The younger me, that was definitely applicable. Like, oh my
Mhm.
gosh, I worried what everyone else thought, and I never gave myself a lick of consideration.
Mhm.
I tell my daughter all the time, "Who cares what other people think?" And of course, right now she
Yeah.
does, but I'm
Of
trying to
course.
instill that from a young age. Don't worry about what other people think. What you think matters more.
Mhm.
So I think that's great advice. I love that question because there's such wisdom that comes out of it, and all the different answers that I get, and they're all so varied. And I don't even know that there's even a theme yet, except that we all know a little more now, and um, it's a lot of encouragement, and hang in there, it gets better, I think is probably the theme in all of those answers, right? Like just hang in there, little you. It does get better. Well,
Exactly.
so when you look forward to like what comes next for you and where you're going next with your business, what do you now believe is possible for your own life?
I think what's possible for me, and I'm learning this, and of course we're all, masterpieces but work in progresses at the same time.
Hmm.
The one thing that I'm learning is, I want to say right off the bat, I want to say that like I can do things that are really scary, but that's something that I've been learning, year and year and year. I think what's
Yeah.
possible for me, and I'm getting there, um, slowly but surely, but I think it's possible to get there, is
Yes.
for me to 100% do what I would like to do without listening to any outside noise at all. And I'll give you
Yep.
like a just completely transparent example of that. Um,
Love it.
I had a conversation earlier today with someone. I have a couple interesting opportunities in front of me. And it's great to have sounding board.
Yes.
And I was having a conversation with a very trusted confidant and good friend of mine. And I'm like, okay, I have these like opportunities, in front of
Hmm.
me. And I I don't necessarily know if it's a good fit yet. And it might be. And I have a lot of like, exploring to do around it still.
Sure.
And she's like, okay, well, think about where you want your career to be in 5 years. And she's like, think about like the picture of your career and what you want people to see of your career in 5 years does this opportunity fit in there? And then the more I thought about it is I don't care if it fits in the picture of where I want my career to be in 5 years
Mhm.
and what I want people to see my career as being in 5 years. Because it's not about that. Is this something that's going to be fulfilling for me right now and make sense for me right now?
Yes. I think a lot of times we're so used to answering the question in terms of this 5-year plan. Where do you see yourself
Yeah.
in 5 years, right?
Mhm.
That we're always kind of thinking of this future vision of us. And I think sometimes we forget that it's okay just to say, yeah, I want to do this because today it feels good. I want to
Yes.
do this because today this is what lights me up. I think it sounds interesting and we'll see where it goes. Like, I don't know that
Mhm.
we always have to have this. I think, listen, I'm a big fan of big goals. Big goals are
Mhm.
amazing. Shoot for the stars, fucking chase your dreams. I am here for that all day long. But I also think we can't only live chasing those dreams. We have to live in the moment and be here today. And what do you want to do today? What sounds the most fun? And I also, a lot of times in coaching people through difficult decisions, we feel like often we find ourselves at this crossroads. Like, do I do option A or option B? And it feels like one is going to be right and one is going to be wrong. And we just have to pick the right one. And the theme that keeps coming back to me in recent conversations is you can always change your mind. So
Mhm.
it I think when we release the pressure, it makes it
Yes.
easier, right? Like, just how does it feel to you? What does your gut say? Um, Abraham Hicks, I talk about them a lot, but they say
Mhm.
if I were in your human shoes today, I would, and I were writing my wedding vows, they said their wedding vows would be, I like you a lot. Let's see how this goes. Like, no commitments to the future, no thinking about what am I going to feel in 10 years?
Mhm.
Just like today this feels really good, let's see how it goes. And I think our decisions would get a lot easier if we took that approach.
Absolutely. And I think that one thing that you just highlighted there was we think that there's a right and a wrong, and that's
Yep.
not true. Um,
Mm-mm.
some situations, like should I kill someone or not? Okay, there's right and wrong there.
Sure. Sure. Yes.
But in our real life, day to day, you know, whether it's a daily decision or a major life or career or whatever
Yeah.
decision, it's there's no right or wrong. There's just different paths to take.
Yes. Yes.
And you can take a path and be like, oh, no, this was not right. Thought it was.
Yeah.
Shift over to something else
Well,
and start again.
and honestly, how many times have we ended up in a job or a position where you're like, oh, shit, this wasn't at all what I thought it was going to be almost every time.
Hmm.
And that's when you get to say, oh, yeah, no, turns out I don't want this after all. And that's okay.
And that's why I think, like you said, you're a fan of big goals, and we have to have those. And
Yeah.
we can't
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
wake up in the morning and say, hey, what do I want to do today? Right? We have to have, we
Yes.
have to have those goals and plans and strategies in place. Um, but when something comes, into our radar and it seems like it feels good, it doesn't necessarily
Yeah.
have to fit into the 5-year plan that we had,
Yes.
because
Yes.
if we want to do it, we can make it fit. You can change your 5-year plan.
It's true. It's true. And I also think a lot of times when I've had those situations where I'm trying to decide which path do I take, do I continue being an entrepreneur? Do I go back to work for someone?
Mhm.
Really great example in my own life.
Mhm.
Um, Sometimes it's just been permission. Maybe I don't have to make this decision right now in this very moment. It might just mean that I need more information. Like, I can kind of put my scientific brain on for a second and be like, all right, I need to gather more data. I need more information about path A, and then I need more information about path B. And typically, as I gather more information, and this is what I've told a family member of mine often, um, she tends to get really overwhelmed with really big decisions. And
Mm.
so I just tell her, okay, hold on. We're just gathering more
Mhm.
information right now. That's all you need to do. And that lessens the pressure. I think we just put so much pressure on ourselves. And we live like everything is black and white, and it's not. We
Mhm.
live in this colorful world, and there's all shades of gray in between black and white, and um, it's not always just this or this.
Yeah, exactly. And what might be right now, and it might change. And like you said,
Yes,
it's not black and white. We really like to go into a place where we think everything is black and white because it seems to simplify things, and it's kind of like human
yes,
nature. We want that. We're right. We want the concrete, you know, black and white, yes or no. But you're right. Like everything is exists on a scale and gradients and different
yeah,
colors, and you know
yeah,
it's if we or when we actually start seeing things that way and giving ourselves the grace, it makes things a lot less stressful. Like you said, let's
it
start
does.
thinking of things of like not so high pressure, but like, okay, we're just collecting more data right now. And that might be,
Yep,
I'm interested in this opportunity. I think I'm gonna head in that direction. I'm just collecting data
yep,
right now. You might be someone who you're not sure if you want to stay an entrepreneur and go all in, or hey, someone offered me a really interesting 9 to 5 I think I might like. Okay, those
yep,
are two things you can decide between, but you could go in one direction and say yes to something, and through the data collection process of
yeah.
you existing in that world and in that decision for some time, might decide, okay, no, I have enough info now to know that I want to go back to this way.
Yes, yes, and I see this happen a lot in the job search arena. So a lot of people,
Mm,
I see a lot of people trying to make the decision on whether or not I want this job before they've even applied. And
yes.
or you're you're about to go to your first interview and you're afraid you might not want the job. And I'm like, it's not even yours yet to say yes or no to until you've got a job offer. And when you have a job offer in hand and you've gone through all these steps and jumped through all their hoops, which are more
Mhm.
and more these days, that's the point that you get to say yes or no. You still are
Exactly.
not, you are not committed.
Mhm.
You are, just because they offer you this job doesn't mean you have to take it. But also, don't think about all the reasons why it might not work or you have all these questions about the position before you've even applied. Like that's what the whole interview process is about, is you gathering more information about the job to know if you want it. I also see this happen with dating. It's we
Yes.
very much have this, are they going to pick me? And that's in that job interview process. Like, are they going to pick me for the
Mhm.
job? Well, do you even want the job? Like this is not a pick me moment. This is a, I'm going to gather more information and see if I choose you. And that same thing goes for dating.
Exactly. And I really love looking at things that way because we like we play all these mental gymnastics like you said before we talk ourselves out of things before we even know before you even apply for a job. It's
Yeah.
what we end up often, and I just mean the collective we, is we could find ourselves in a situation like you said, dating, job search, etc., where we go into a place of not wanting to get rejected, of feeling like we need to win
Yes.
whatever it is.
Yes.
And then what we're doing is we are making decisions and behaving and thinking and acting in a way based on, I don't want to be rejected, I want to win, blah, blah, blah. Instead of, like you said, the interviewing and dating process should be more of, is this even a right fit for me? Not, do I want to win? Do I not want to be rejected?
Yes. Well, and there's a mantra that I have taken from Amanda Francis and used and shared because it's so brilliant. She says, this is her mantra. She says, I am a catch. I am the prize. I am the whole damn vibe. And when we put that in our minds, doesn't matter if you're going on a first date with someone, if you are showing up for a job interview, or I don't know, you're meeting your future mother in law, whatever the scenario is, like when we put that in our bones and feel like I am amazing. Like, I am the prize. You get to date me.
Mhm.
You get to potentially have me as an employee. That shifts the whole thing. And I'm all about relieving pressure because we put all this pressure on ourselves every which way till Sunday.
Mhm.
And it's just another way to lighten up a little bit,
Yeah.
because that would be my theme to myself in all of my lessons. Just relax already.
Yes.
Young Shauna, just relax already.
Young me needs to hear that, and pretty much all of my closest friends, younger selves, need to hear that too. So
Yes.
I'm sure we're not
Yes.
alone in
It's
that.
all about it's all about relieving some pressure and not taking things so seriously. Well, so tell me, what is next for your business? What are you focused on moving forward?
So for me, I think my business as being an entrepreneur and executive coach, I absolutely love and adore. Of course, I'm always focused on my clients and making sure everything is the best that it could be. I am at a stage and phase where the next steps for me is really focusing on my bucket list and less
Nice.
of my like job.
Yeah.
So this year specifically, I've been really kind of, I kind of have 3 to 5 kind of like bucket list life goal type things that are career related, but it's not necessarily
Yeah.
part of my job that I'm kind of working on.
Focused on. I
Being a
love that.
little selfish, doing things I want now.
Good for you. Good for you. Well, so my last question for you is, how can people find you?
So I can be found. My favorite way to connect with people is through Instagram and LinkedIn. I don't post often, but I have some really amazing conversations with people. Um, so my Instagram and my LinkedIn are both Candace Yaeger, no spaces. The spelling of my name is kind of can be messed up in multiple ways, but I know that you'll have that in the show notes, I'm sure.
I will. I
Um,
will.
and if anyone's interested in my TED Talk, where I talk about being selfish and I share my story and kind of how I started again after trauma and tragedy and taught myself to actually be a little more selfish and prioritize me and my wants. If you go to TED.com and type in my name, my talk comes up as well, or in YouTube.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Well, I will definitely include those in the show notes so everyone can go scroll on down to see all of those different places and ways to engage with you.
Yeah.
But thank you for being here and for sharing your story. It was such a fun conversation.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me, and I really appreciate what you're doing and how you're helping people start again and how just real and authentic you are with your audience and your community. So I have great appreciation for that.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, it's been fun. Did you like this episode or did you love it? Inquiring minds want to know. The best way to support this show is to subscribe and leave a review. I can't wait to hear what you have to say. Thank you so much for listening. Until next time.